Uh, Good morning, everyone. Let's see, I guess turn on the video. I don't know, keep me late. Okay, here I am. Okay, so this morning I've been reading this book or listening to it. It's called Brain Faith. This book is called The Next Conversation, Argue Less, Talk More by Jefferson Fisher. And I'm not the only one who's listened to Jefferson Fisher on YouTube. Uh, it was Luke that got my attention to listen to Jefferson Fisher because he was talking a lot about um, how to communicate with others and especially in certain situations. And his YouTubes were really beneficial to me, helping me to like try to slow down, think about what I was saying, how I was reacting instead of just communicating with others. And so, and as I was watching or listening to, oh, it was his podcast. He started out, Jefferson Fisher started out making these small YouTubes on, the shorts, I'm sorry, shorts on YouTube. And then from there, he went and started doing a podcast on the same topic of communication. And then because of those, the YouTubes and the podcast, people were asking questions. And out of those questions, he created a book to answer those big questions. And so I was reading the book and just got so much out of it that I wanted to be able to share it. Now, of course, I can't share the entire book with you today because, an hour and a half is just not long enough. But I was going to share some of the highlights and suggest if you want to learn more about communication. He's just really good at it. He is a trial attorney, but he's really good at communication, and he learned this from his father and his grandfather. And the way he teaches communication, it's all about listening to the other person, not putting down other people, but communicating in a way that is respectful, that gets to the issues. Like, say you're, you're with somebody and the communication is going off the rails. It's possible that the person that you're communicating with isn't really the person that's communicating, meaning you're talking with this person, but there's a whole bunch going on underneath that you're not seeing. Like something happened earlier in the day, or they're under a whole lot of stress, or so who you're communicating with might not be. They just might have other things on their mind, and they're reacting to those other issues. And so his his the way he teaches, it tries you to gets you to slow down. The gist of it is to slow down, try to get to what's really going on with the person that you're talking with, and to communicate, not react. So basically, you're asking a lot of questions, kind of like the way Elder Parmenter does, is when we say something, instead of responding right away, he always asks us more questions to get to what exactly is going on behind our question. And so I learned so much. I'm learning so much from Jefferson Fisher that I just wanted to share that with you so that way, hopefully, um, you could learn more too if you feel like you need some more information on communication. Because I know that we need to communicate. Even our classes right here between each other, um, we need to be able to communicate, not just react and not just to throw things out, but to really think about what we're saying. And because every word matters, like Elder Parmenter's been teaching us, and the William Miller's rules teach us that every word matters. And so we need to slow down our brain in every situation. And one of the things that Jefferson Fisher really talks about is that your first word in responding to somebody else should be your breath. So not just saying words, but the first thing you should do is take a breath, which gives you a pause to calm down, to think about, and not just calm down, but just center yourself, because like even if the conversation is going really well, but you have somebody ask you a question, it gives you time to like really think about it, like to center yourself and I don't know, say a prayer, ask for God's help. Jefferson Fisher doesn't go in that direction, but I'm just saying that, take a breath and really think about what you're going to say before you just throw something out. And that's a huge part of his gist is that we're we're supposed to calm down and not react to the other person, but to think about it and come back and always be respectful to the other person. So, let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna look at my notes and oh, let's see. What I want to do is show you all the contents of what his book has so you can see, but I'm not gonna like read through all the notes because it's too much. So hopefully I'll just be able to hit some of the highlights, and if you have questions, we can talk about those. I want to share. I want to show this. And this is just so you can get an idea of the content of his book. So can everybody see uh, a dark black screen with purple writing on it? Can you see
Yes.
that? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. And am I talking in an okay volume?
Yes.
Yes, sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So is this type big enough for everyone? Is it too small for anyone? Okay, cool. All right, so this is the table of contents for his book. And so he goes over part one is the essentials, where he talks about the main thing, the main goal of every communication, argument, disagreement is to never try to win an argument. Never try to win an argument. Because if you're trying to win and you do win, uh, the other person's a loser, right? The other person loses. And if the other person loses, then there's just going to be that tension between you because that other person is going to have resentment. And so in the next conversation you have with that person, there's going to be that underlining resentment from that person, right? And then it's going to be harder. You're going to put bricks in a wall, right, between the two of you. So you never want to try to win an argument. Okay, but what you want to do is when you're in a conversation with a person, especially in a disagreement, your goal is always to learn. So you want to learn their side and you want to hopefully get the other person to want to learn more on your side. So that way you can both come at it where with the understanding to learn about each other, about our sides and not try to completely persuade and get them to change their mind, but just show them what you have, let them show you what they have, and you can find places where you can connect and move forward from there. Not trying to win an argument, not trying to completely change their mind, but show them what you have, let them say what they need to say, listen, and while they're talking, don't be thinking about what you're going to say next. If you've come up with an idea, like write it down, but continue listening to what they're saying, not just what you're thinking, but listen to what they're saying, or else you won't be able to learn about them and be able to connect. And that's what conversations are about. Isn't that what God created us as a counterpoint for talking with each other? If we can't learn to listen, to the person next to us, our neighbor who's talking, how will we ever listen to God? You know, is it God says you have to love your neighbor. If you don't love your neighbor and you say you love me, you're a liar, right? And so if we're not listening to the person next to us, our neighbor, loving them, respecting them, listening, not just listening to what we have to say, but listening to them, then we won't be able to listen to God, right? That's my logic. I might be completely off, but it makes sense. I don't know. But then, okay, so the next part of the book goes into your next conversation. So he talks about in this part, he's going. A lot of this book has to do with like kind of like arguments, not so much, like disagreements in conversations, right? And so in this next chapter, chapter 2, on your next conversation, is pretty much about like, okay, you've already had a disagreement with a conversation, um, and kind of bad feelings as you walked away. And then when you come back to your next conversation with this person, um, how you would communicate, like apologizing and coming into it from a different direction, listening and getting the two of you to work things out, listen to each other, even if you don't agree at the end, you would still learn more about each other and each other's point of view and like that connection to make that connection. And that's where he talks a lot about that connection. And then he goes into chapter 3 is about the truth about connection and gets into detail about that. And then in part 2, it's the application of the essentials of from part 1. So, and then it talks about saying it with control. So, how to control yourself, how to control the moment, how to control the pace of the conversation. And then rule 2, say it with confidence, assertive voice, difficult people, and boundaries. And when it comes to confidence, he's telling us that confidence is a feeling. It's not a state of being. It's not something you can actually learn by a definition. It's something you learn through action. So you can't get confident about about something without practicing. So like if you're not a confident speaker, the only way you can learn to be a confident speaker is by practicing. So you have to go out and you have to do a presentation to be able to get something under your belt to become confident with it, right? So, and the more you speak, the more confidence you get, which gives you more confidence to speak, which gives you more confidence, right? So it's a circular thing. And so the more you do, the more confident, the more you do, the more confident. And so that's what confidence is. And so you have more a better feeling, which gives you more confidence, which gives you a better feeling, right? And to do that, he talks about your assertive voice, which is different than aggressive. And we'll talk about the difference between being assertive and aggressive. And I think, um, especially when it comes to women, when people talk about an assertive woman, they more or less think of her as being aggressive, not assertive, and because assertive women are frowned upon, but it's only because people are looking at it as being aggressive, not assertive, because assertive is defining your boundaries and speaking up for yourself. And we'll talk a little, hopefully we'll get to it to talk a little bit about that. And then rule 3 is to, okay, rule 3 is say it to connect. And then so he gets into the type of, how to connect and different frames of that and defensiveness. And so, does anybody have any questions so far? This is just the table of contents, and we're not going to end up have time to go through all of these different places. but I'm going to focus on the essentials first. So anybody have any questions?
What is the name of this book again? So I
Oh,
missed
good,
that.
good question. Thank you. It's called go up to the top right here. The Next Conversation, Argue Less, Talk More by Jefferson Fisher. And it's through Tarcher is the publisher, Penguin Books. And it was published in March 18 of 2025. And I could give you, let's see, I could copy the link to this page. Wait, this is about this right one. Yeah, I think this is the page where, like on the web where you could get more information on the book. Um, chat. Here we go. This one. Okay, and so that's a link to the book. I've been listening to it on Audible, and Jefferson Fisher himself reads the book. He has a real clear, calm, steady voice, so he doesn't like read through it really fast. He takes his time, and for me, it was a really good, steady pace, so I could understand him clearly, and it gave my brain time to process what he was saying. Yeah, I had to re-listen to a few of the things just to really get the ideas into my head. I guess I was taking notes at the same time. But and then I wanted to give you the link where you could find his podcast. Let's see, where's his podcast? It's in here somewhere. Here, this is the first one, sorry. So you can listen to his podcast either as a podcast or on YouTube. He has them on YouTube also. But this is for the actual podcast. And then if you want to listen to them on YouTube, where is it? This link. And he, on this YouTube site, he has a whole bunch of shorts, which are really great because he's able to just really condense ideas down and make them so straightforward. I learned a lot from it on communication. It's Communicating is not something I'm good at, so I really appreciate what he was talking about because I do have a hard time slowing down. I'm better at reacting, which is not good, and so I really appreciated um, his talks.
Hey there. I wanted to know if, well, he probably does, but I wanted to know if he talks about, which I'm sure he does because the whole book is about therapeutic communication, but that's like what something that we've been learning about in school. And I mean, you really learn it from day one, but um, it kind of just weaves all the way, throughout the beginning of the course to the end is learning about therapeutic communication. And so we also like learned about, different ways that are, or things that are barriers when it comes to communicating effectively. And so
Mhm.
that really interested me when you were talking about communicating. So I know that is a really big that's a really big deal. Much bigger
Yes.
than I initially, thought. I didn't realize how much of a bad communicator I was. But going through school, and them kind of honing in and zoning in on therapeutic communication really taught me a lot. So I'm gonna read this book, but thank you.
Well, thank you. If you have some books or YouTubes or anything that you would like to recommend, please put those in the chat because any little bit we can learn about communication, I think is really good for us. After all, that's part of why we were created and part of our job, I believe, to communicate, right? And so anything you can add to that, I'd really appreciate. Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Mm. Cool. All right, so I'm just going to go through. I don't know if you want to view it. I mean, I'm just going to hit some of the things. So I was going to just I think I have to apologize, and because I'm going to end up having to read a lot of what the notes I took instead, because I don't have it all memorized. But so anyway, the essentials. Like I said earlier, he said you never want to win an argument. Number two is about the next conversation, and number three is the truth about connection. So in chapter one, never win an argument. I'm going to talk about that. And let's see, let me open up the chat. Okay, there. And now just to make sure if you have any questions. So never win an argument. When you win an argument, like I was talking about earlier, when you win an argument, the other person in the argument loses. And then where are you in that relationship? You're in the same unresolved issue, plus there's more hurt feelings. And you could lose their trust, their respect, or even their connection, their relationship. Uh, you may only win the argument and their contempt. And nobody wants that, right? Um, I know for me, sometimes I have a hard time with that because I grew up with that. Conversations were in my family were about winning the conversation. And so it's built into my brain as a habit to try to win an argument. And so it's something I have to unlearn, which makes it a little bit more difficult, right? But it's something we need to slow down, and it's something I need to work on for me. So if use the argument to learn more about the person, to make a connection. Maybe something is going on in their life. Maybe they are angry or sad or frustrated because of something that happened prior to your meeting up. And the person you see may not be the person you are talking to. And then by giving up the idea of winning the argument, you could get more out of the conversation than you could even imagine. You could learn more about the person and create a deeper relationship. And you could learn more about the issue and about how to resolve it. You could learn more about a topic that will give you greater understanding of the big picture. So stop seeing arguments as something to win, but as an opportunity to understand the person behind the words. Stop hearing only what is said and start hearing what is being felt because emotions are huge, right? We've learned that when later on, people may not remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And so that's why if you're winning a conversation, they're gonna remember how you made them feel about that. And that's not what I'm assuming, but I know that's not what I would want in a conversation. I would not want them to walk away with bad feelings, right? And so stop seeing arguments as something to win, but as an opportunity to understand the person behind those words. Stop hearing only what is said and start hearing what is felt, so that a connection to that person can be made. By seeing each other and listening, we can act and be more like Jesus, right? Because Jesus, we saw in the Bible, listened, and I don't remember, there's no conversation that I remember that Jesus ever put anyone down and put them in their place. He did ask questions that made people think, you know. Um, so I think that's and Jesus is our example. Um, what if they are wrong and become defensive? That's a good question, and hopefully we'll have time to come to that because there is more information in this book on when people are defensive, and hopefully we'll get to that part of it, how you can respond back to those questions. How can you respond back? And usually it goes back to uh, not saying something, but asking questions. So that way you learn more about where that defensiveness is coming from and mm, how to respond correctly with respect and kindness, right? Because there might be something triggering them from being a kid, right? And so we want to answer in a loving way because what they're being triggered on might not be exactly what is being discussed, right? So there's other underlining things. Okay, so yeah, Donna says like find out where they're coming from by genuinely listening to their perspective by asking questions. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what. And okay, so any other comments or questions on that? Because
Yeah,
that's the yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that when it comes to therapeutic communication, especially from what you've expressed from this book, is that ego is a is can be a barrier to
Yes.
therapeutic communication. Because often when you're trying to win an argument, um, more often than not, you're really not thinking about understanding or trying to understand the other person first. So it's not altruistic. You know what I mean? You're not just immediately like, okay, well, let me put this person's perspective or see where they're coming from and try to understand first. Because what if you are right and they are wrong, like someone said, but they get defensive? If
Hmm.
you actually kind of put your ego aside and say, okay, well, let's just kind of work through this. And then when you work through the conversation, even if they still disagree, but your ego was put aside and you really were truly trying to understand the person, I believe that there would be an underlining like tone of genuity there. And I believe that that could be felt versus like I think that would be felt more than just even if they just felt like really horrible, and because the way we deliver things as well can cause someone to feel a certain way about um a subject depending on how we deliver it. Because sometimes often, especially if we are right, our delivery can be very strong. So that just kind of made me think of a barrier. So I was like, what would be a barrier in this case, or could be a barrier in this case?
Great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I agree. Ego, which is related to pride, is can just really stop the communication right there. That's a really good point. Thank you.
Christina.
Yeah. Hi, Bob.
Also, I just wanted to mention that elements of what you're discussing here are to me, it's triggering some of the conversation that Elder Parmenter had with us about fast brain and slow brain. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I was thinking too. Because we really have to slow down ourselves. We can't just allow our slow brain to or a fast brain to just go off the rails. It's a hard lesson to learn, especially anyone who's been raised in an emotional volatile type of communication setting as a child, right? we have to break a whole lot of old habits and to relearn how to communicate. And but it's never too late, and the present is always a good time to start. So we just need to practice. Thank you for your comments. Anybody else? Yeah, Troy says yes. Oh, Francisco has a comment.
When you were talking about
Better.
when you were talking about starting the conversation with a deep breath, that could be the point where you try to engage your slow brain
Yeah.
and not go into the conversation out of emotions and being amped up or whatever the situation is, you know.
Yeah.
You can go in there and try to slow your uh like you said, think about what you're going to say and not go in there reacting, but adding to the conversation
Mhm.
instead of inciting it. That's
I,
all I got.
I agree. Thank you. That breath, it sounds like it's just a short time, but it really, if you really slow yourself down, you can really think of a lot in that moment, just to slowing yourself down and not reacting. Sometimes it's hard, right? Somebody's like, in your face and telling you, yada, 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 and bringing up the emotion, and that deep breath is to not take on that emotion, but calm down and center yourself. And then once you do that, you can really um, try to listen and respond in a way that will diffuse the situation by asking questions instead, or like in a bad situation like that, sometimes it's best to what Jefferson Fisher teaches is that sometimes it's best to repeat their words back to them, and or ask them, okay, did you mean for what you say to be hurtful? As and not in a bad way. So we're never trying to make the other person feel bad, because you don't want them to feel bad in walking away from a conversation. But what you're trying to do is get them to see what they're saying. Okay, so is this really what you meant to say? Is this your goal? He uses better words. It's in my notes, but are you trying to get me to feel bad, or are you trying to make me feel belittled, or and so sometimes just asking questions and getting them to think about their words, they will hear what they are saying, and they might not be trying to do that, and they'll kind of backtrack and say, no, this is what I meant. There was, we just had a communication problem. And in other times it will just give them a mirror to show, okay, you're not acting very Christian-like or very, very Jesus-like right now. And so it will slow them down too, and try to diffuse the situation, calm everybody down. And that's the whole gist, is that we're trying to slow down conversations so that way it's one-on-one in a calm communication, communicating back and forth. That's what communication is not one person just da 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 da, da, right? It's being calm and communicating back and forth, on ideas, and really trying to get to listen. We need to listen, and hopefully the other person will be listening too, and we can resolve issues and come up with better solutions. Like, we can have problems and everybody say, well, we've got this problem, I got this problem. But if we slow down and communicate, maybe we can actually come up with ideas to resolve those problems, and right. And Donna says, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel, right? By Maya Angelou. Yeah, it's an amazing quote, and it's so true, right? Um, Troy says, wondering how does that work with a person with an antagonistic maladapted personality style? It's a good question. Let's see. Let's go into some of the examples. Okay, let's see, because that's a big one. I'm looking at my notes. Okay. And then we'll go back to some of the other stuff, but because it's a question that's been asked a couple of times. So let's give some examples. All right, it's in here somewhere. Okay. Okay, let's start with so say if someone insults or offends. Okay, so somebody says something like I don't know, you suck, right? I'm sure there can be like lots of different, things a person could say that can insult and offend that are it's like he used one example like, oh, so you finally lost that weight, which might sound like they might seem to be thinking that's a compliment, but in no way it is, right? Because it puts a person down. So what you want to do, here's how you would react. So someone just said something that was insulting or offending, right? And what you do is you give a long pause. So you just wait, you give a long pause. And the purpose of that, the pause will give time for them to hear their own words. So, because that's the last thing that's in the air, right? They'll have to listen to what they said, and it gives them pause to listen to their own words. And that pause also allows their words to fall they get to you. So you're not going to react. So which keeps you from getting defensive. So you just let their words fall, you don't get defensive, right? And then that long pause also makes them rethink their words. Did they really mean that? Is that really what they want to say? And it will make them uncomfortable. The silence will usually makes people uncomfortable. And then the silence takes away their dopamine because like in situations that people who were raised in a very chaotic where something's always going wrong, right? They get that dopamine and they learn that that's their normal, right? And so if you're dealing with somebody who's like that, then what they're trying to do is set up a situation where there is an argument so they can get that dopamine. But by being silent, they don't get that, and then the argument can't continue, right? It just stops. And then after that long pause, you will slowly repeat their words back to them. Okay, so by repeating their words back to them, and you say, is this what you said? You know, and then you repeat those words back. And then often the silence, you might not need to repeat the words back because often that silence will be enough, for them to like backtrack a bit. But if it's not, if they don't like kind of take it back, then you echo their words back to them, and so you're ensuring that they heard every word that they said. And then you just keep breathing and maintain your composure. And that's what you would do if someone insults or offends. Now, if somebody tries to belittle you, they belittle or patronize or can you, oops, shoot. I think my speak. Can you all still hear me? Because my speaker went off.
Yes.
Yes.
So can you all still hear me?
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, my
Mhm.
speaker decided to go off by itself. Okay, so when someone belittles, patronizes, or condescends, try these steps. Oh, good, thank you. Okay, so make them say it again. So say, I need you to repeat that. Okay. And then when you make them say it again, repeat what they just said, it takes like all the fun out of it. So they're trying to belittle you, right? If they're trying to belittle you, they're trying to make fun of you, they're trying to mock you, right? But if you make them repeat it, it takes the fun out of it. And then when someone makes a belittling comment, they expect the attention to turn to you. But while they're waiting for your response, but instead it turns the attention back to them, and which makes them uncomfortable. And you're not trying to hurt their feelings, you're just trying to get them to see, really, is that really where you want to come from? Is that really what you want to say? Is that really how you want this conversation to go? And then after you make them repeat what they just said, ask a question of outcome, meaning so you're going to ask the question of how did they want that comment to come out. So this question seeks to highlight and project the reaction that they were trying to elicit from you. And then you are verbalizing the echo that they need to hear. So ask questions like, did you want that to hurt? Oops, sorry. Did you want that to hurt? Or say something like, did you want that to embarrass me? Was that supposed to make me feel small? Did you feel good did it feel good to say that out loud? Questions like that. So you're making comments to let them know how it could have affected you, and so that they can see, is this really your intention? And then and then after you make the question, just reply with silence. Just let it drop, and because no matter what their answer is to that question, just let your reply be silence. It's better not to respond. Let their bad behavior linger. Your silence shows that you are in control and with composure. So you're composed, you're in control of yourself and the conversation, because you're not going to pick that up and run with it. You're just going to let it drop. Okay. And then here's if someone is rude or dismissive. And all three of these are different. One of them is offending and insulting, one is belittling, condescending, and this last one is being rude or dismissive. Like what you say doesn't matter. So the goal of these types of comments for being rude and dismissive is to invalidate your thoughts or your beliefs. And so you want to give a short pause. So if somebody says something that is dismissive, like talks over you, like you never said anything, or says something like, "Oh, you'll be okay. Don't worry about it," and so it dismisses what you just said. What you want to do is give a short pause, pause just long enough for them to consider their words, and then wait so they're going to weigh whether or not what they said is worth your time and effort. So is it worth your time and effort to respond to that? So ask, and then you can ask a question of intent. Did you mean for that to sound rude, offensive, or dismissive? Did you mean for that to sound offensive? Did you mean for that to sound dismissive? Or you could say, did you mean for that to come across short? Or what did you intend with that statement? How did you expect me to react to that? Was that meant to be helpful or hurtful? And then these questions work to both verbally and written in communication. So if somebody's in an email doing the same thing, these questions will work either way in being verbal or in like an email or a text. Uh, so did those examples help? Let's see.
Good job.
Good. Good. Thank you. Donna says these are some of the same strategies that couples relationship experts John and Julie Gottman use in their highly successful relationships counseling. That's good. That's good. And then Anna says dismissiveness happens all the time when I talk to my sister. This is a good thing for me to learn how to respond to her. Yes, that's good. And then first off, remember, before is that you want to come back with respect, right? So you want to make sure that you're responding back so she can see her words, but in a respectful, loving manner, because you want her to see how she's hurting you, but you're not trying to hurt her back, right? You just want her to see these words that you're giving me, these are hurting me. And that's how you want to respond in those questions. So she can see what she's doing. And hopefully that will change the way she responds to you.
Yeah, I like the point about repeating it back.
Yep,
If you're just either saying it word for word or you're just paraphrasing and asking, is this what you're saying? Another one of the things that I remember learning is like one of the phrases, I'm hearing you say, etc. Or
yeah,
is this, like you're saying, is this what you're trying to say? But just that part had like stuck with me. I'm hearing you say, and then you're, paraphrase it, and that person
yeah,
gets to kind of say, well, no, 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 I'm not saying that, or yeah, yeah, I am saying exactly that. But the whole paraphrasing and repeating it back kind of gives you that clarification and confirmation.
exactly. Thank you. Yes, and that way they understand what you're thinking, how that information that what they said is coming across to you. So that's important because that way they learn a little bit more how about you and how it's coming across. And that way if like she said, if it's not coming across correctly, they can change the way they're saying it so you can understand better what they meant. Or if that's exactly what they meant, they can hear what they were saying and hopefully change the way they respond to
Okay,
becoming.
also last thing, because this is a really good topic. But
Okay.
when it comes to communication, I feel like I don't know, just like I feel like personally, like for me, being a bad communicator was I feel like I was a bad communicator, and it's still something that I'm learning because I often sometimes would shy away from communication. Like sometimes people just don't like communicating because it can either get out of control, and sometimes that can be a bit scary, and then sometimes it can just go. You already kind of can foresee situations probably when it comes to communicating um, going left, right? If things are not communicated properly, and if the person on the receiving end does not clearly understand what is being said. But being assertive, like you were saying earlier, often can come across as, especially in the case of women, can come across as just being aggressive and totally, just out of this world. And
Yeah.
so we learned, like, even at work and in school, we learned that, especially because, in nursing, it's predominantly a female dominated field to work in. And so women are often taught to be assertive. Like you have to be assertive, even if it's scary to do, if that makes sense. You have
Yeah.
to really do it. And they kind of teach us ways into do it. And like this is a really good way, and the strategies that you're teaching are like much appreciated.
Okay, good. I'm glad. It's sometimes it's hard to step out of like the movement message, right? But and so I considered whether or not I should do this, but I'm glad it's beneficial. Thanks. Any other comments or questions?
Just a comment. Hi,
Okay,
Christine. Yeah,
Jackie.
maybe you're coming up on this topic of well, self-defense or that's coming out of a conversation from someone that is maybe going negative.
Mhm.
And it's setting boundaries
Yes.
and how far you let that go with other people,
Hmm.
especially when you know what they're like, and yet, you can deal with it with patience and allowing them to speak their mind, like you've already covered a little bit about that. And and it's not on purpose even. It's just people's habits
Yes.
too. They have these habits, they're raised in different ways too that cause these habits to go through their life. I mean, that's how they're operating. And they don't even realize it. So,
Agreed.
but you want to be able to open the door to them, to not be defensive about what they're saying, but yet still draw boundaries.
Hmm.
So that was my thought, starting out here, but you might get to that with something else you're going to talk about. So,
Thank you, Jackie. I think boundaries are in it. Hopefully, I'll get to that part because I'm sure he talked about boundaries in the book. Um, yes, so hopefully we'll get to that part too. And so I think right now I'm going to go to the goals of conversations because it does talk it mentions defensiveness. And so a goal of a conversation, so that way we kind of have an idea of what goals we should have for conversations. And especially if you know about you're going to meet with somebody and you know that this conversation is coming up, how you can prepare for it. Especially if you know that you're both on like maybe two different sides or just to have two different opinions on something, that you want to make sure that your goals are set ahead of time so that way the conversation can't get derailed, and so the other person or yourself can't get defensive if you set goals ahead of time and stay on track, and to keep the conversation calm. So let's go over conversation goals, because he says that your conversations do need goals, right? And he says to choose the goals, you want to choose goals that are reachable. And examples of goals that are reachable would be, I want to hear the other person's perspective without myself getting defensive. And that would be vice versa. You want to be able to share your perspective without that other person getting defensive, right? And I
yeah,
want to,
that's perfect.
right? Exactly. So by creating those goals ahead of time, and having, maybe you don't know this conversation is coming up, but if you do this personally right now, when conversations come up that could be like this, um, it's not going to be a specific conversation, but to find your values and know that, okay, these are my values. And if I come up into a conversation, um, these are the things that I want to project in this conversation, no matter what conversation it is, then it could help you, even if it's spontaneous, in the middle of a grocery store, or, something comes up in one of our meetings that you didn't expect, and here it is, this conversation. These values that you have can help guide your conversations, can guide your words, so that way every conversation could stay calm, right? To be able to diffuse things, to keep things uh, coming back and forth, communication, open communication, open listening, right? And so other goals would be I want to listen without interrupting. And one thing about that is I wanted to mention is that, okay, so a lot of times I know for me that when I'm listening to somebody's conversation, a question pops up, right? And so I was thinking, if I had a piece of paper, I could write down the question real quick and then continue listening. Because if I interrupt, it will interrupt their thought, and then they might not be able to get back to that. And what they're saying is important, and I need to be able to listen. So if I write down that comment, like a shorthand of remember to come back and ask this question, then I can continue listening to what they're saying and continue making that connection, right? So for me, I think that would be important if I could just write down my questions and then continue on without interrupting their cadence, their thought process. And then another more goals is I want us both to be able to understand each other better, have something to learn and not something to prove, have a plan where the outcome benefits both sides, ensure that the other person knows how I care about them, how I care about what they're saying, gain a better understanding of where the other person is coming from, agree on steps to mitigate or eliminate reoccurrence of the issue. So maybe even talk with the other person and agree on some steps, like with the person ahead of time. If you know it's like a planned conversation, where you could say, let's like maybe talk about what your goals are with them. Say, I'd really like this meeting to be where we can both listen to each other, understand each other better, even if we disagree, be able to understand each other's point of view better, so we can understand each other, that we can make a connection together. And there's nothing wrong with just laying it all out there, so that they understand what you're trying to do. And then this might help them also. Like if they haven't studied on communication, this might slow them down and help them understand and take this conversation differently also. It might be a true learning experience for them also. So you can agree on steps to mitigate or eliminate a reoccurrence of, the issue or disagreements. Acknowledge each other's feelings without judgment. The conversation could be triggering a feeling for them or for you, and be able to acknowledge those feelings without any judgment, just because we don't know what happened earlier in their life that would cause them to feel that way, because it might not seem to us that what I just said could trigger that feeling, but we can't judge that feeling on them. We don't know what happened to them as a child or previous, and we can't judge that, even if it doesn't seem to us that it connects. Um, to them, in their fast brain, it connects, and that's what's important, not how we see it, but how their body sees it, how their brain sees it. And hopefully we can work through that and help them be able to communicate better and be able to get past this trigger in this situation. And then we both want to leave the conversation feeling heard and having, good feelings about the other person, even if we're not in agreement. An agreement doesn't have to be really reached, but being able to make that connection with the other person, being able to listen to them, having them listen to us, and just being able to learn more is more important than our point being made and them being converted, right? Because it's all about communicating, right? And then, okay, so that's first one, choose your goal. So your conversations need goals. And then to define the goal for you for your next conversation, you want to ask these questions. And before I go to that, let's see, are there any questions on those goals?
Christine?
Yeah, hi Troy.
Hi, I don't have a question on those goals, but I was wondering, maybe your thoughts, others' thoughts in the group, or maybe from Jefferson. How do
Hmm.
you handle uh, a group setting? Let me give an example. One-on-one conversation between you and another. Your belief, is known, but the person doesn't accept your perspective,
Uh,
and you respect that. You
mhm.
respect their perspective. You respect that the fact that they don't agree with you because they don't have to. But then it's always taken into a public setting, let's say with family members or friends.
Hmm.
Your belief is always brought to the forefront, and it's always meant to criticize, demean, devalue. How do you handle that in a group? You walk away silent? How do you react?
I think it would go back to those questions from like how do you react on if somebody's trying to say something that is insulting or belittling or dismissive, and then you would um, come back with a comment like, did you mean for that comment to hurt me? Or are you trying to demean me or repeating exactly their words back to them so they can hear that their words are coming across as being dismissive or demeaning, that you would go back to that. And basically, you ask them a question to define what they're saying, that I believe that it would go to that. And so there, are you trying to be dismissive to me? Are you trying to hurt me in front of all of these people? Are you trying to make my beliefs sound um, unimportant in front of all of these people? So you go back and ask them a question and let them, because if they're doing that in front of a group of people and you repeat those words back, they're going to see that what they're saying in front of a bunch of people, they're going to see that they're being mean to you in front of all of them, and it won't look good on them, right? That at least that's the way I would uh, see that he would Jefferson Fisher would handle that, to do that, to ask a question. Is that what you mean? You know, does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
And is that possible in the group of people that you're thinking of, that where that person does that?
To be honest, it depends because then, I mean, from the past, you have those who will catch on, mimicking, laughing, also catching on to the devaluing and all of that. Oh, you believe that? Oh, that's, whatever, and
Yeah.
just negative. So maybe sometimes it probably would work. I don't know.
Yeah, you would have to, it would be a situational thing where you would have to see, okay, will this make a difference at this time? Um, d does the person understand that the comments they make on a regular basis does hurt? Is that what they're going for? Do you know?
I don't know, but maybe that's the aim.
Uh-huh.
Um, but thinking about it honestly, to be honest, I don't know.
It might be a conversation you could have one-on-one, or you could wait until a situation happens. Only you know, but you kind of want to get down to the bottom of that, because if it continues to happen all the time, then they should understand what this is doing, Because then you're just ending up with bad feelings towards them. Okay.
right, and resentment, and it keeps building. But I think it's more of a superiority kind of thing, and
Okay.
it would fuel for them to know that, oh, I'm hurt. It only drives them more. That's my
Uh-huh.
opinion of the person.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Oh, if they knew that it hurt you, it would just drive them more to do it.
that's my experience, my opinion. Yeah.
Oh, oh, that's too bad. I'm sorry. Shoot. There's no way to get out of that. I'm sorry. Um, yeah, without having a conversation with them and let them know how where you stand on that. I don't know. That's frustrating.
It comes back to, I remember one convo. It comes back to, like, it's not the exact word, but it's like, be a man. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
you sounding like you having too much feeling. You're too sensitive. You just be a man. Those type of conversation.
I get it. Yeah. Men do have feelings. I don't people think that they don't, but men do have feelings. It, it's unfortunate that people try to put those in a container and put a cap on them because it it only causes friction and uh, by putting a cap on it, it can build up and build up into to a point where it explodes. With say, and I'm not saying that you're going to destruction because I don't, I no, but what I'm saying is overall in general, there are men that wife beaters who all that stuff explodes and then they take it out on their wife or their children or their dogs or the other things is it can cause from what I understand there's more men that can commit suicide than women because probably has a lot to do with their emotions, right? If you're trying to suppress a man's emotions. Oh, there was another example but I lost it, of outcomes besides exploding and suicide. I can't remember. But anyway, um, good things don't come from having men suppress their emotions. It's not a good thing. It's hurtful, right? And then they just get shut off and it's not right. So I apologize. I'm sorry that there's someone in your life that suppresses your emotions, tries to. Uh, let's see. Sarah says, most of the conflicts that I encounter are based on my beliefs and faith. It's kind of hard to come to a place of understanding. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. But you can maybe come to a place of connection because even in your understandings, there's got to be a place where you and the other person can connect, right? Even if it's on a personal level, you should be able to connect as human beings. And if you can, like I said, I have neighbors across the street that they're completely on the other side, and we find a way to connect. And so I don't feel threatened by my neighbors because we have been able to connect on a different level than Trump and politics, right? And so they can see that I'm not a bad person and be able to connect that way. And so then because of that, they can see how I behave and they can hopefully see God uh, in my character. And that's what I'm trying to do is be an example because I can't talk to them about issues because they won't listen, but they can see how I act and my behavior and hopefully see God instead of me. And that's for some people that's all I can do, right? see, Donna says in 2021, the global suicide rate for men was 12.3 per 100,000 population, which is more than double the rate of women. And I've never read a study on this, but I could bet too that it has a lot to do with emotions, suppressed emotions, and because they're not being allowed to share those, and people have to be able to share all sides of themselves. Mhm.
So when you were talking about the goals for when having a conversation, you come to that conversation with a goal in mind or set goals in mind. I was thinking about, some of those goals probably being, the goal is to understand
Mhm.
what this individual or how this individual sees the topic or the situation at hand. And then maybe also kind of understanding what is the underlying principle, but maybe also having one of the goals could also be to maybe just see what similarities you may even have with this person, especially when it comes to that a certain topic, because sometimes there may be a slight disconnect. Sometimes there may be something that's not clicking, not just for the other person, but also for you. And
Mhm.
then, light bulbs and, things go off. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm glad, I had this conversation because I didn't see this way. More often than not, like sometimes even when making goals, right, it can be a bit selfish, right? Because you're like, this is the
Sure.
goal, I just, want to get here and just to defend this, topic or whatever from my standpoint. But also, even when setting goals for a conversation and communicating with someone, it can, now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, also, what about me setting a goal, for myself as well when it comes to having this conversation? What would I like to take or happen from this conversation? What can I learn from this conversation? The goal is for me to also learn from this person now, and not just, well, the goal is I want to, of course, you want to understand them, but you can even internalize it. And then that would help you to even better understand the individual, the topic itself as well,
Mm.
and the perspective that they're taking it from. Because I noticed that often when we have conversations and communicate with people, we're just really understanding their perspective on how they may see things, whether it be, and the reasons why they have these perspectives, whether it be, personal situations that they've you know, got into, a childhood situation growing up, culture, etc. But you begin to see a perspective maybe that you've never even encountered, or thought about. So I was just thinking about that when you brought up the idea about goals.
Yeah, exactly. That's good because um, if our goal is just to get them to understand us, then we're not going to be listening to them. And if they if they sense that we're not listening to them, they're not going to listen to us. It's a one-on-one thing. If we listen, then hopefully they will listen too. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Is it good? All right. Hold on. I got to cough a little bit. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Yes, we need to exercise equality in our conversations. Like, so having understanding both ways, going in to learn something, not just to have them to learn from us. I think that is Taisha, right? Is that's been sharing with us? Because it just says iPhone, but
Oh yeah, that's me. I'm sorry. I didn't
okay,
my
okay.
name.
I thought so, but I thought I recognized your voice. Okay, so yeah, that's Taisha. Thank you. Okay, so here's how you can define your goals. Because it's easy to say you should have goals, but here's how to define your goals for your next conversation. And you can ask yourself these questions. Okay. If I had to choose, what's the one thing I need the person to understand? What is it that I'm like, sharing that I really need them to understand? And then what's a small step I can take to show them that I've heard them? So I want them to know that I've heard them. What can I say? What step can I take to let them know that I did hear them? What are the assumptions that I'm making right now? What am I assuming about what they're going to say or what I'm going to say? What are the assumptions I'm making right now? How can I show gratitude for the opportunity just to talk to them? Because having conversations isn't always easy to get their time, right? Get their time to have a conversation, get the opportunity. So having gratitude towards just having an opportunity to have a conversation with somebody um, is important. So how can I show that gratitude for the opportunity that they took time to talk with me? Um, is there a part of this that deep down, if I'm really being honest with myself, that I'm trying to win? Am I trying to win a certain part of this conversation? Because you have to be honest with yourself too. Because if you're going into it, even unconsciously, to win something, you need to think about that. Am I trying to win something? If you can think about that ahead of time, maybe you can find a way to dissipate that, like okay, I shouldn't try to win this part. Here's how I can go about not trying to win that part, how I can really focus on listening, but, also sharing. So these questions will help you formulate goals that will help you to get to where you are going in the conversation. And a goal is just a destination, right? It also, you need the means to get there. And the means to get there would be your values. So the goal is your destination, but your values kind of help you get to that goal. And so we're going to talk about your values and why your conversations need values. But before we do that, does anybody have any comments or questions on how you define your next conversation, how you create those goals, or any other comments or questions? Okay. So why your conversations need values, your values, right? Values and conversations serve as your compass to ensure your goals set the direction of what you truly find important, fulfilling, and meaningful. Your values show you how to show up for yourself. Who do you want to be seen as after this conversation ends? And so, what is the impression you want to leave with that person? Values project an image of who you are and what you stand for. In conversations, values also inform the behaviors that influence how you listen, respond, and engage. So a goal could be being heard, but your value might be honesty, right? So I value honesty, but my goal is being heard. My goal is to be heard in this conversation, right? So your goals and your values are different. Jefferson gave us some of his personal goals as examples, so you can see. Uh, so some of his personal goals are um, where there is room for kindness, I will use it. And so he says, I want to treat others with kindness regardless of their behavior. So his value is where there is room for kindness, I will use it. But his goal would be, I want to treat others with kindness regardless of their behavior. His value, another value is to tell them who I am without saying my name. So that would be a value. And his goal is, I want my actions to speak louder than my words. His value, if I can't be a bridge, I'll be a lighthouse. So if he can't bridge somebody's understanding, his actions can speak for him. So his goal would be, I want to be a steady source of light, a safe place that they can come back to, even when resolution is not immediately possible. So when you align your communications with your values, you increase the likelihood of reaching your goals. And this means the real work has to happen before you open up your mouth to speak, before you have a conversation, which brings it back to, if you plan ahead of time, if you figure out your values, your own values and the goals that you want in everyday conversations, then even if something comes up impromptu, if something just happens and I'm in a conversation with somebody, say you have um, some running in at a grocery store or car accident or something where you're going to end up in a impromptu conversation with a person, and you don't want it to be emotionally escalated. You want it to be calm and have a one-on-one where information can be passed back and forth. You want to know ahead of time what your values are and what your goals in any conversation would be to, be calm and to be able to communicate back and forth, to be able to be heard, but also to listen, to learn more about that other person. If you do that ahead of time, then whenever those things come up, you can be prepared. So here's an exercise, and we're running out of time, but 4 minutes left. So I'm just going to give you these last this exercise questions helps you to find define what your values are. So what you can do is poll, so ask, survey, some people around you that know you, family, friends, roommates, people around you that know you, right? Ask these people who know you best, ask these questions. Number one, what do you think I find most important in my life based on our daily conversations? Because the things you talk about are going to reflect what you think. What are your values, right? Number two, what are 3 words you would use to describe my character to someone who doesn't know me? So, if that person is describing you to somebody else, what are the 3 words that they would use to describe you? Number 3, what topics of conversation do I get most enthusiastic about? Number 4, what quality is most important to me in the friendships that I have? And number 5, what emotion do you wish I'd show more often? So that poll is simply to help bring into focus the image that you currently put out to the world, to other people. So by seeing how you project yourself, if it's not projecting what you would hope your values and goals are, then you can reflect on, how am I coming across? Uh, what values do I want to have, and how do I want to project those through goals in a conversation? And that would help you get to those values that you want to have and to be able to project them. And to prepare for those conversations, for your next conversation, to prepare for it. number one, you want to be realistic. You want to be intentional, and you want to know what your goal is for those conversations and which values do you want to show up in those goals. And the foundation of every strong relationship is built on a mindset of where the aim isn't to win, but to connect, to share, and to grow. So the book, I found it so helpful. And, if you have the time and the money to read or listen, it's a book I would recommend. But if you don't have the time, if you go on and you're interested in learning more about communication, if you go on that YouTube site with Jefferson Fisher, he has all these little shorts that are from like 3 to 5 minutes of all these things. And he gets into some of the things that we've talked about today of someone feeling defensive. How do you react to somebody who's being defensive? There's so many that he has done. So if you could go through those shorts and find some that hit on the topic that you are concerned about, that you want to learn more about, I would highly recommend it. Um, he's just, like I said earlier, is speaks clearly, calmly, and a really not like too slow pace, but he doesn't speak fast, so he just speaks at a very consistent, calm pace, so that everything can be understood and heard. And I just, out of all the people I've ever listened to, he just seems like he's really teaching a good message, similar to what Elder Parmenter is teaching on slowing down, making every word count, being respectful of the other person. What Jesus teaches is on loving our neighbor. I believe that to show love of your neighbor, you have to be able to be willing to listen to that other neighbor, to be able to hear what they're saying, hear the emotion from where they're coming, and be able to communicate on that level, not just on the level of, okay, I want you to hear what I have to say, but be able to communicate back and forth so you can hear what they're saying, and hopefully they will allow you to respond back by hearing what you're saying. And I hope that helped. I
Is
hope
there a hard copy? I'm sorry. Is
a
there a
hard
hard
copy.
copy of this book?
Oh yes, yes. You can get that. Did is it does would anybody like not get the links that I put up there before? I can put them up there again, where you can purchase this. I'm pretty sure you can get it in regular bookstores, but then there's also you can get it on the internet. Let's see. This has more information of the book. I'm pretty sure you can get it on Amazon. Um, I was listening to it through Audible, but that's because listening is easier for me than reading, because I have to read every paragraph at least 2 or 3 times. Uh, and so hearing him go through it uh, was good for me. But yeah, there is a hard copy. And yeah. So thank you all for listening. It was an honor. Um, that's all I have.
Well, thank you,
So
Christine.
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, no, I believe, Christine, that the subject matter is very pertinent uh, to not only to this movement, but to humanity itself.
Yeah.
Because, we talk a lot, but we don't really communicate.
Yes.
We say a lot of words, but we don't really connect. So I think that personally, for me, when I try to express myself, before saying what I want to say, I try to imagine how is the other person going to take what I say.
Yes.
So yeah, so I try to choose my words carefully so not to offend them. Um, so I'm pretty good at that. My problem is when I get offended, I don't know how to react properly. Um, for me, it's fight or flight. I either argue back or I just walk away. And so this helped me with there is a middle ground. For example, like asking those kind of questions. Did you mean? Um, what did you mean by this? Things like that. I think I need to listen to the podcast to get, to have those information ingrained in my brain so that when I have this feeling of fighting or flight, that I these, better thoughts would come to my mind so that we can communicate.
Yes.
Um, you know, so this is, between human beings of the same culture, the times that we're living in now, how to communicate better. And because I often think of, well, when I get to heaven and I have to encounter people that died, let's say 6,000 years ago. Um, they made it to heaven, just like I made it into heaven by the grace of God, but we're going to come from a different culture. And so, we talk about Abraham, dying in a patriarchal culture, but I don't know if we really give it a thought, like what does that really mean? And I think about that a lot. And so if I don't learn how to communicate now, when potentially we have let's just say for the lack of words, argument, just because of different culture, or an Egyptian, or with people that are outside of our culture, yet they're in heaven.
Mhm.
If we don't learn to communicate now, if there's that potential time and space for an argument, how do we not argue? And how do we actually connect and communicate so they can understand? It might take 10 attempts. We might have a conversation and then leave it at that and come back and have another conversation and, leave it at that and then come back again and have another conversation until we come to an agreement. I mean, if you look at Elder Parminder, not everybody agrees with Elder Parminder.
Right.
We can look in these videos, and there's some people that no matter what Elder Parminder, the angle that our Elder Parminder takes, he comes from, if somebody disagrees, he comes from this angle. If somebody else disagree, and if they still disagree, he comes from another angle. And I'm not even in the conversation. I'm getting impatient. But Elder Parminder very patiently comes from very different angles and doesn't lose his temper. And it's like wow, I already lost my temper. you know, and sometimes they just end up disagreeing, and it's okay. And maybe the next time in the same subject, maybe there'll be an agreement. But I think of things like that. So I think it's very helpful for us to learn to communicate now and connect now, so that when we do come across different cultures, different people, that we can really connect and communicate then. So thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. Thank you. You had some very insightful comments. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
I just wanted to say one last thing. Somebody made a point in the chat earlier about being judgmental, and I don't know if because I'm gonna look for this book, and I wanted to know if he also speaks about that in this book because being being in this movement, for quite some time, that's one of the things that I often would notice, especially coming from a conservative standpoint, is that you can be very judgmental,
Mm.
before you begin to actually understand someone else's perspective or why, or even begin to ask the question, well, why, do you think this way? Um, it, and more often than not, if you're a very judgmental person, it really only takes for you to hear um, a trigger, to just it could be a trigger word, that it's gonna just kind of block you from or put a shield up from you even
Mhm.
being able to understand someone as they're talking. Um, and so I think that is also a very big topic as well. Just being very judgmental. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Because when people talk, and oftentimes, some people they don't.
I think her mic went off or she muted herself.
Taisha, did you get muted? Oh.
Sorry, I had got cut off.
Oops.
Anyways, it's totally fine. You can end it. But
Oh,
yeah, anyways, it was just
well,
judgmental mess.
I appreciate you making that comment because it is hard to listen without judging. And it's another habit we need to learn to break. And I totally agree with you. We need to listen and not be judgmental because it affects how we hear what they're saying. And if we're being judgmental, we won't be listening. So that's a good point. Thank you. Mm, There's some information in there on communicate in the chat on communicating with people with dementia too. Linda put in there a book, The Busy Caregiver's Guide to Advanced Alzheimer's Disease by Jennifer Stelter. Uh, and since Linda put it in there, I'm assuming that she's adding that because there's information on how to communicate with people with Alzheimer's, and which would be the same way of communicating with somebody with dementia, because the dementia's a big umbrella, and Alzheimer's is one of the things that fits under that. Um, it's recommended by your employer. There are I have 7 kinds of dementia. Yeah. So thank you all for your attention, and I hope you have a blessed Sabbath. So we'll go ahead and pray. Uh, Dear Heavenly God, we thank you again for this Sabbath. It's a beautiful day. We thank you for Bob's presentation on William Miller's rules, and I thank you for leading us into this conversation on communication. We have so much to unlearn and so much to learn. We pray, Lord, that you will help us to be willing to unlearn, to see our places where we need to learn and help us to unlearn these things and help us to learn to communicate better, how to listen, how to communicate back and forth where we're sharing ideas in a calm and listening mode. We have so much to learn ourselves, so much for us to be able to move forward. We just thank you, Lord, for all that you're teaching us, in all ways that you've guided us, for the blessing that you give us. And we continue to lift up those who are struggling. May you give them comfort and strength in this time, and hope and faith. And we pray all this in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus. Amen.